All right, guys, welcome back to Crossman Productions. Man, it's been a wild and crazy Monday. Hope everybody's was able to enjoy their day. I know everybody's coming in from work and just trying to kick back and relax, get ready to eat dinner. We wanted to jump on. I wanted to have this guest on last week, but the schedule didn't kind of work out for us. But I am really excited about having him on tonight and getting to know Jason Jones, the Space Cowboy. So, we were able to finally get our schedules together, and I got him on tonight. I'm excited about having him on, talking to him, and getting to know him. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring him in. What's up, brother?
Hey, buddy. What's going on, man?
Hey, not much, man. I know we tried to work this out last week, and it was kind of my bad because I was supposed to remind you, and
it's all right, man. It's crazy. We both got crazy schedules, and I was in and out, and I was about to leave out for AEW last Tuesday, so it was nuts, man. So I'm glad we nailed it down today, though.
Yeah, I am too, man, and I'm excited about having you on and kind of getting to know you and about your journey. I don't know if you saw, I had Wolverine on last week.
That's my boy.
Cool guy. Yeah, super cool guy. Up until just recently, I didn't even know that slap fighting was like a big thing.
It's, the crazy thing about slap fight is I started off like being the first host of slap fight, like before COVID, and we were doing live events at like the bars and things. And I had known Ron just casually through like MMA, and I used to promote a lot of boxing and stuff. And JT Tilley, the promoter, had Ron on one of his shows in Springfield, and I think they rented one of my rings, something along that lines, and I may have announced for him that night. And then when Ron came in to do the slap fight, I was like, man, this dude's tough. And then the more that Ron and I talked, the more we had in common. We're both Arkansas boys.
Right.
He's just a good old boy. He likes to spend time with his family. And, man, he's just tough as nails. Not only does he, have the best, technique in slap fight,
right,
he also can take a pummeling to the face over and over and over. And I was recently in Vegas, and just a random girl stopped me. She was like, oh, my gosh, my husband's the biggest slap fight fan in the world. I was out there for a wrestling thing, and I get noticed. It's almost I get noticed more for slap fight. And I think during COVID, people had time to kind of sit back and watch that happen on their phones. Right. Everybody had a lot more screen time. And it just built a following, and it blew up. Like I remember the first time kids came up to me and they're like, we know you from TikTok. And I'm like, I don't have any wrestling videos on TikTok. And they're not like, no. I was like, I don't have TikTok. And they're like, no, the slap guy. And I was like, how are you guys watching that? Because for them, under the impression, I just thought when we started, it was the live events and pay-per-view.
Right.
Man, when they started clipping those out and putting individual fights, millions and millions of views, man, it just took off and exploded.
Man.
Crazy.
Yes, and talk about how tough Wolverine Ron is. He said the longest match he had went 27 rounds.
I was there, and
That's
was brutal.
Crazy.
It was finally a doctor's stoppage, and Wolverine wanted to keep going. Everybody wanted to keep going, and just the doctor stopped it. It was just
wow.
It was crazy. Long day. It was a long day at the office that day.
Yeah, I can imagine.
More for him than it was for me. I was just sitting there in my little suit, sweating to death. But
right,
Wolverine, man, he takes some punishment and he dishes it out too. That's what makes him such a great competitor.
Yeah, he told me that he said he ended up losing because of the stoppage, but that they had to create a rule after that and put a limit of how many rounds slap fighting could go.
Yeah,
so,
and that was part of the selling point of that fight, I believe, because it was unlimited rounds. And his eye got so bad, it started swelling, and the doctor was afraid to let it go on. And Ron was just heartbroken and crushed, man. And I can remember doing the post-match interview. I thought he was just so passionate. He's like, I'm good to keep going. And he just he wanted to go, but he understood that there has to be rules like that in place, to to
Right.
protect the athlete and I guess the sport, So
Right. Well, cool, man. So, I wanted to come bring you in and kind of get to know you as well and your story.
yes, sir. I'm gonna pop that hat off now. I'll look a little bit more presentable.
Cool. So, kind of tell us kind of where you grew up and what was life like for you.
Man, I had a great life. I had a great childhood. Everybody talks negative. I had a great childhood. I was born and raised in Harrison, Arkansas. If you guys don't know where it is, we're like 30 minutes south of Branson, Missouri. We're an hour and 10 minutes from Fayetteville. We're an hour from Mountain Home. We're just kind of that. And I remember when I was a kid, it was called the crossroads of the Ozarks. You had to go through Harrison to get anywhere, So,
right.
I grew up watching wrestling with my dad. My dad really enjoyed it. He used to take me to a lot of events, and my dad would really enjoy watching the crowd. So just a couple times a year, whenever the WWF or the NWA would come to like Little Rock or Memphis, he would check me out of school, and we would go. He took me to Kansas City a couple times, but we would go and watch wrestling, and that was like our father-son bonding time. So it was always like the special place in my heart, and I really grew to like the same thing he did, which was watching the crowd and watching the wrestlers get different reactions out of the crowd. So I think that's probably what made me gravitate to want to, be a professional wrestler. Was like, because when you're young, especially growing up in the 80s with Hulkamania and all that stuff, you get to see all that and you're like, this is real. And then, you start getting older and everybody's like, oh, that's fake. That's phony. And you start watching it and you're like, well, maybe they're not trying to hit each other as hard as they can in the face, but man, they can still go. And you still try to be, you're trying to be a fan of it. And I just gravitated to these guys are great entertainers. And I always appreciated the athleticism, and I appreciated the live theater part of it, and there is a certain amount of improv that comes to that. If something goes wrong and you blow your knee out in the match, you got to get to point A to point B somehow or another, and you can't just stop. You can't just say, oops. It's not, as I tell people all the time, it's not like boxing or MMA where you get knocked out in 10 seconds and it's over. These people paid for a couple hours of the show. You better get back up and get back in there. So, but I had a great childhood growing up here in the Ozarks, man. There was always something to do. Had great grandparents. My grandfather owned a farm, so there was always being a farm boy stuff, riding four-wheelers and just being a kid, man. I enjoyed it. Played a lot of organized sports, played football and baseball and soccer and basketball. Loved basketball when I was a kid. I thought I wanted to be the first white Harlem Globetrotter. But my mom and dad took me to see the Harlem Globetrotters when I was probably like in the third grade. And that was I loved it. I just thought it was a great form of entertainment. So I always knew I wanted to do something in like entertaining crowds, but I didn't know what it was going to be. And my love of pro wrestling got spiked again back in like the early to mid 90s. And I guess I got started and I guess I got the bug and I haven't grown up since. So
cool. You brought up a lot of good things. First of all, back in the 80s, wrestling was huge with, Hulkamania. I think that was the era of like some of the best wrestling stars, Ultimate Warrior, Andre the Giant. You had the Von Erich brothers. You had
good stuff.
There's tons of great Jimmy Snuka. I can name 1,000 of them, man. Junkyard Dog.
One of my best buddies in the whole world is the Mouth of South, Jimmy Hart, and I was with him this weekend in St. Louis, and we're on the road all the time. Like, we've got our Christmas tour coming up. We do every year for about 4 days in a row. We line up a few dates around Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, and we'll hit them. And it's Jimmy was one of those guys I grew up watching on TV, and now to get to learn from him and hear his insight, not just from wrestling, but business and show business, because Jimmy was in a band years ago called the Gentrys, and they had a hit with "Keep on Dancing." You know that song, "I Keep on Dancing." That was them, and so he broke into the showbiz business, and they went on tour like their first. And they were like 18, 19 years old out of high school with Dick Clark when they would do those Cavalcade of Stars. It was like the Beach Boys and Sonny and Cher and the Gentrys, and so Dick Clark the very first day had a meeting. He said, "Be on time." To sound check, be on time everywhere you're supposed to go. And he said, number 2, dress and look the part. He said, if you dress like the audience, you're going to end up in the audience. And that stuck with Jimmy. And you can tell that all the way through the 80s. He always had the wild and loud suits. He said, even when he was in Memphis and didn't have a lot of money, he would go to the dollar store and buy things. And his wife would sew music notes on his jacket. He would wear these crazy sunglasses, or he would buy these ridiculous looking neckties and paint them up and stuff. So that's one thing that we had him come in and when I was teaching class, we had him come in and sit in with my students, and he watched them wrestle. And then we just all sat down in the ring. Jimmy sat in the ring with us, sat down, crisscross applesauce, and lended him some words of wisdom. And I was like, guys, I would have killed for something like this 25 years ago when I was getting in the business, for a legend like that to sit down and tell you the secrets to his success and what he saw work for him and everybody else. And that's like, you know, that's like Hogan's right-hand man is Jimmy Hart still to this day. I mean, he hosts karaoke at Hogan's Beach Shop every Monday night. Him and Hogan do a lot of things together. So if you can't learn anything on the business end of wrestling from Hulk Hogan or Jimmy Hart, there's something wrong with you, man. So that's I've learned a lot, and it's so great to get a chance to work with some of my heroes I grew up watching, like we were talking about in the 80s and early 90s. I was a big NWA fan. I loved Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes and the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express. And to get a chance now, you fast forward years later, I've had a chance to work with a lot of those guys, and it's like a dream come true. So I'm very grateful.
So do you remember the first time you decided to go into wrestling and your first match? What was that like?
Nerve-wracking. I started off, and I had started training off and on kind of when I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school. And there was, at the time, there weren't like, wrestling schools weren't as accessible. There was probably 4 of them in the United States, and you had to go to Florida or you had to go to New York and pay $3-4 grand. Well, there weren't a lot of wrestling schools, so your best bet was to find a promoter coming through with a wrestling show that was running and say, hey, how'd I get in the business? You know, maybe he'd say, show up on this day, give me a couple $100 bucks, we're going to have so-and-so beat the far out of you and see if you come back. But I was lucky enough that a wrestling promoter came through town, and I did what I got to do to help. I'll pop popcorn, I'll sell programs. So I first broke in like learning he showed me how to run the music, and I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
He told me how to, and this is back how long ago now it is. Guys today, they bring their music on an MP3 that they come out to, or they email it to the promoter. Then in my day, it was you bring a CD and you wrote Space Cowboy song number 4. You gave that to the guy playing the music. At the end of the night, you got your CD back and you took it to the next town with you and everything else. But when I started, and when I started running music, it was cassette tapes. So guys would bring you the cassette tape, and they were supposed to have it ready to the spot and tell you what side it was on. And it was like, Mr. Wrestling 4, and you would hit play, and his music would hit, and you would watch him, and he'd do his little thing in the ring, and then hit stop, turn the volume down, pull the next tape in. Then they wouldn't tell me who was going to win because they, because I was young and they didn't want to smarten me up. And they were just like, well, whoever wins, you need to kind of listen. You couldn't play it back. You would have both tapes sitting right there. And you would be like, boom. And you'd throw it in there and you would hit play. And I can remember like the third time I did it, we went to a venue and they didn't have the PA public address that went over the high school gymnasium. Right. So they gave me a microphone and a tape player, and they had me hit play, and I would hold the microphone to the tape player like, there you go. And then, and also they were like, hey, you're going to have to ring the bell tonight too. And I was like, I get to sit ringside and ring the bell and play the music. The most embarrassing thing was there was no bell. They gave me a regular framing hammer and told me to ring the ring post. So
wow.
I'm holding the deal to the tape player.
Right.
They stop, and then I'm waiting for the referee, and I've got my big hammer, not a regular ring hammer. And he's like, ring the bell. And I'm like, clang, clang, clang. You know, I'm just hitting as hard as I could. But that's, you got to start somewhere, you know.
Right.
And that got my love going. And then I thought I wanted to go into radio. So I got kind of an internship at a local radio station. And when wrestling came back around, I met another promoter. And I was like, hey, look, I've kind of somewhat started training before, and I would like to ring announce your event. Oh, yeah. And he brought me in. He kind of smartened me up just enough to get through that event. And he said, well, hey, I'm going to be back in like 3 weeks, and we're going to do like 4 shows in a row. Would you like to ring announce them? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I showed up early. I help him set up the ring. So whatever I could do to try to get 5 minutes in there to, learn this or learn that. And it's not like today when there's rules in place and there's safety involved. It was like, hey, I'm going to run at you as hard as I can. I'm going to hit you with a clothesline. If you get up, you can come back next week. If you don't, see you later, kid. And that's basically what happened. They took my neck off with a clothesline. I got up, and I couldn't walk the next day worth a darn, but I came back the next week, and then I came back the next week. And once you get bit by that bug,
right,
it's so hard because there's that surge of adrenaline that hits you. Ring announcing was fun. I still enjoy announcing. There's a lot of times I'll just go and take announcing gigs, and I enjoy that. But I think I've got a few more years, a little bit gas left in the tank where I can still go out there and still wrestle and finish up that little bit of a local legacy that I've done, and then ride off into the sunset for the career, but then still do something where I still help promote, or I still do commentary, or I still do announcing, and I'm still coaching. You know, I'm still training guys and girls, and watching them and getting to live vicariously through them. So that's always exciting to get to. It's like you feel like a proud parent. Like I attended WWE last night in Springfield as a guest, and the host of the evening was a girl I trained.
Oh, wow.
Kelly Kincaid, and she took her first bumps from me. She's a contracted wrestler and announcer with NXT. So to get to see somebody start at day one and then end up where they wanted to be and making a good living with the, biggest company, it's pretty cool, man. It's pretty cool. It's a proud parent moment, when I get to see guys or girls that I've trained, and you see them in matches, and you see them putting it together, and you see their character evolving, and you see, well, they're out there, they're doing this, and then you see them going to other companies, winning belts, doing this, doing that. So proud. There's nothing better than seeing a guy you started off with and you helped influence running into a locker room just randomly down the road and catching up. And it's so cool. It's so fulfilling too, man. I really love it. Really love it.
So let me ask you this. What is, since you've been doing this, what's the biggest takeaway that you've learned throughout your years?
Gosh, man, there's so many. It's hard to stick out with one. My aunt told me something years ago, and I say this all the time, and I tell my kids this. She told me, I was 18 years old, and she said, whatever you end up doing with your life, if the Lord blesses you with something and he gives you a gift, and you don't use that good to help others, he can take it from you just like that. And I was like, oh my gosh. And that stuck with me. So there's a lot of things that I do. I'm always the first one to try to help a local charity out, or do an event, or go and wrestle for organization that's doing a fundraiser. I just always try to think, what if that was me in that position? What if that was my kid that needed that fundraiser for cancer treatments or this or that? And I just, even though my contribution may be minimal, if everybody does their minimal or does just a little bit, that little bit turns into a lot.
Exactly.
And that can really be a blessing for somebody in a time of need. You know, I mean, I look at some of these parents that we do some of these cancer fundraisers like WFC, Wrestling for a Cause, in Oklahoma does. And what they do is these parents that have children that have childhood cancer, they raise money for them so they can go pay for gas and hotels when their kids have to go to away treatments and things like that. And that's things that people don't think of. They may say, well, you know, that kid's got insurance, this or that or whatever, but think about mom or dad that have to miss work to go with them to do that. Think about the money and time and, you know, gas money, hotel rooms that they have to pay for out of pocket. And it's just, you know, something happened to one of my kids right now. I think of how my life would change completely because everything gets put on hold because, you know, you've got to take care of that kid. And I try to put myself in other people's positions as much as I can. So I would say the biggest thing that I take away from that is if you're the best ditch digger, be the best ditch digger you can be, but, you know, help the church out, dig a ditch every now and then. Help somebody out of the ditch if you have to, if you see them break down, because it can be gone. It can be gone in a just like that, man.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of advice I would give to anybody. Just always try to take care of somebody else and use whatever you do well. Try to use it to help somebody out because I think the blessings will rain on you when that happens, whether you're religious or not.
Right.
I think that'll come full circle for you.
Yeah. You know, when you were talking about that, for some reason I thought about Sean Bradley, who used to play for the Dallas Mavericks. He was the center for the Dallas Mavericks. Second tallest player in the NBA.
Was that like late 90s?
Yeah, he was. It was back when Dirk first started. Dirk Nowitzki. So he played center, but a couple of years ago, he was on a bike, got hit, and now he's paralyzed from the neck down. So it makes you realize. I mean, this guy came in the league. He was one of the greatest centers in the league, you know, and then you know later on, you know, he suffered a tragedy, and you know, it's so that's a very true statement. I mean, yeah, you never know, you know, when something happens.
No, you don't, man. So it does make you think,
right? So that's good stuff. Let me ask you this, because you're still out there wrestling. Is there a particular person that you would like to fight? If you could fight anyone out there, who that you'd love to fight?
Like, here's the deal. Like, I've been asked this a bunch. Mm-hmm. Is it someone that's currently wrestling now, or is it someone that like maybe that's not wrestling now, but I grew up watching? If they're, I'll answer them both. I think.
Okay.
If it was anybody,
right,
all time, it would probably be Ric Flair, just to say I had a match with Ric Flair.
Oh wow. Okay.
Not Hulk Hogan. Nothing against those. Right. But I always loved Ric Flair. Now, gosh. Man, I don't know. You know, and it's weird, and I say this. It's not that I don't keep up with current wrestling. There's a lot of good wrestlers out there. I think Cody Rhodes is really gifted. Right. I think he's a great talent. I think there's a lot of great talents out there. I probably wouldn't give him justice of a match, though. I mean, some of those guys are so athletic, and some of the things that they can do anymore, like that high flying and those flips. Oh no, buddy. You know, it's like I tell people when I train guys, I was like, we got a couple rings down there. I got some nice $5,000 crash pads. You can try that stuff on, but I'm not the guy to show you how to do it the best.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know current who would be. I guess Cody Rhodes. He's really good. He's gifted. He's really gifted, and I like him a lot. So I was a big fan of Dusty Rhodes. Like even to this day, I wear the boots, like, you know, you see like the Dusty style boots.
Right.
I do his bionic elbow. I've done his bionic elbow for over 20 years. You know, the boom, 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 and the wind up and I've done that for years and years, and that's kind of a tribute to Dusty. I'd say Cody currently and Ric Flair past. So.
Well, let's do just fighters too.
What now?
That's two great fighters too. That's
absolutely, man.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, cool. So let me ask you, how did you get the name Space Cowboy? Where's the name come from?
Weird story. It's everybody's like, where they think it came from.
Right.
It is, but it's not. It's when I first started, just my name was Jason Jones, and the promoter I worked for that started, he was like, "Yeah, you talk like this," and he was like, "I want to call you Double J." And I was like, I don't know if I want to be Double J, because there was Jeff Jarrett at the time. He was Double J,
Right.
And he just kept saying Double J, Double J. And I was like, all right, I'll be Double J, Jason Jones. And I went by that. And I told two of my buddies, we were traveling, doing one of our first weekend full of wrestling, like doing a Friday night show and a Saturday night show. And we're driving and we're in the middle of Kansas. And I told them the night before, I was like, I don't want to be Double J anymore. And they're like, we're going to get you a name before this weekend's over. And we're going down the road. And I was just trying to think of anything I could think of. And I was like, what about the Space Cowboy? And my buddy goes, well, if you're the Space Cowboy, I get to be the Gangster of Love. And then my other buddy in the back, he was like, I don't want to be Maurice, though. And I mean, it didn't. 5 seconds later, we're in the middle of Kansas, and on the radio, Steve Miller Band, Joker came on, and the first line out of that, some people call me the Space Cowboy, and they all turned and looked at me like they saw a ghost. And they were like, well, that's your sign right there. So I took it and ran with it. I haven't got sued yet, so I guess we're okay. Did I lose you on the screen there? Did I lose you? Anyway, I guess I'm on the screen by myself. I don't know what happened. I don't know if I'm still live or whatever the case of it is. But, yeah, Steve Miller Band. I don't know if I'm live or not, guys. Yeah, I haven't heard from him. So if I am live, I'll hit my plugs for my t-shirt right now. Go to spacecowboywrestling.com or mswtickets.com. The shirt that I'm wearing, you can get that on there. Sizes small through 4XL. And then the brand new, this came out this last week, the new old school wrestling shirt at spacecowboywrestling.com or mswtickets.com. And you can get all your mid-stage wrestling tickets, and you can get the official Space Cowboy, get those super soft shirts. And like I said, our t-shirts start at size small. They go all the way up to 4XL. So I don't know whether to end this or not because I can't hear from him. So I don't know what to do. Let me see if I can hit the button.
Hey guys, sorry about that. We're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but Jason's about to jump back on. So give us a second. It's one of the problems I have with this program that considering trying something different later. But anyways, here's Jason.
On.
All right, there we go, brother. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. It kicked both of us out.
And now the camera shot changed, and I got too much. Like, I just started doing plugs. I didn't know what else to do.
Oh, I apologize. I don't know. This is technology, man. Sometimes this thing works like perfectly, and then just every now and again they'll just kick me out. I don't know why it does that. I'm going to find a new program.
I didn't have to buy anything to log in, so we're good.
Yeah. So anyway,
are we back on?
Yeah, we're back. We're back.
I was plugging my merch. I didn't know if it was still rolling on me or not, so I was plugging my T-shirts.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you about that too. So we were talking about Space Cowboy. They were calling you Double J.
Yeah. And so I'll finish that story up real quick in case it was a loop or whatever. I don't know if you patch these back together or what you do.
Yeah.
Double J, and then I said, we're on the road to Kansas, and I said, how about the Space Cowboy? My buddy was like, well, if you're the Space Cowboy, I get to be the Gangster of Love. And then my other buddy was like, I am definitely not going to be Maurice in this situation. So we just laughed. And literally just a couple seconds down the road, middle of Kansas, Space Cowboy, Joker by Steve Miller comes on the radio. And, of course, the first line out of the song, some people call me the Space Cowboy.
Right.
They all looked at me like they had seen a ghost.
Wow.
And they were like, well, you have to use it now. And I was like, I guess you're right. So,
wow.
Then you fast forward 25, 26 years, and I'm sitting here with a Space Cowboy shirt that I'm about to hit a plug for. So, I mean, that's it. If you like this new T-shirt, you can pick them up, sizes small through 4XL on our website, mswtickets.com or spacecowboywrestling.com. And I've got the little Simpson-inspired Space Cowboy guy. Where'd he go? There'd he go.
There he goes.
The world famous. And then these new ones that came out last week, they've been a really big hit.
Oh, wow.
The old school wrestling shirts. So it's nice rock and roll font. Right. Pretty cool. But I do try to stock big boys on there. So I've got small all the way up through like 4XL on there. We only charge $2.85 shipping. So hop on there and get you a T-shirt.
Definitely.
My kids and my family appreciate you buying a T-shirt too.
Right? Yeah, definitely. I have to jump on and get one. So, so let me ask you this. So as somebody who's trying to get into this industry, I mean, you work with a lot of them. What is the biggest piece of advice that you give them?
Don't do it. Honestly, yeah. I try to steer people away from it because I just let them know, like, right offhand, like, the odds of making it in pro wrestling are slimmer than making it on an NFL team. To be, I mean, it's just, in NFL, you have such a wide roster on each team, and the odds they say of making that are like, what is it, 1 in 121,000 or something like that. Even more so in pro wrestling because there's technically only 2 big companies. A lot of people only say one, and they've only got a good 20 spots on each roster, and it's very hard to make it. So if I tell them, if you're content with, being gone on the weekends, traveling and making your body do something that it naturally does not want to do. Right. Your body doesn't want to let you fall down on your back without your hands trying to catch you.
Right.
I try to steer them away from it first when I talk to them, but I also know that people also want to try it. Right. And I'd say out of those people that try it, I do stress it's not like it was back in my day when you started in. I stress safety. I'm not a drill instructor. A lot of coaches, even back then, they would want you to pay like $3,000 and then make you do 1,000 Hindu squats and 100, or 500 setups and try to make you puke. And then they get you in there and whip you so you wouldn't come back because they already had your money. So I try to work with everybody because who am I to try to stand in the way of somebody trying to live their dreams? Right. I try to just accommodate that. So what we do is we charge a $50 one-time workout if they want to come and try it out. You'll get in the ring. I make sure that they're 18 years old and they sign a waiver and all that stuff and that they're physically able to do to get in there and do it. You'll learn a few bumps and falls. Like I said, I got a few of the really high dollar crash pads. So I let them learn on that to make sure that the safety's there. Then I move them into the ring and we go over a few things. And at the end of the day, if they like it,
Right.
they want to continue, I say, look, hey, our gym dues are going to start at like $75 a month. You know, we train on Tuesday nights, and then I do private seminars, you know, for like some people that can't make it on Tuesday nights, but I'm always traveling on the weekend.
Right.
So unless it's a seminar I'm doing somewhere else before a show for someone, I don't really do that. But I have a really good facility in Harrison, Arkansas, which is it's easy to get to. I have a lot of students that come out of Springfield, Missouri.
Right.
I have some that are coming as far north as close to Kansas City and,
Okay.
you know, Mountain Home, Arkansas, things like that. And West Plains, Missouri, different places in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. So it's a good little place to meet. I have a couple rings in there. We just got the building next door, so we're expanding. I have more room to do training and have not just that, but like, it's not just a guy with a ring. It's you're learning, you're doing interviews, you're learning classroom stuff. We're setting, like I said, we have a makeshift studio in there, but with this new area, we'll have a green screen where we'll train you with TV interviews. And
cool.
When guys have matches on Saturday night and they come to train, they can actually do the interview for that promoter promoting that match and send them everything. So we want to make it where it's not just that, but it's a place that they can use to grow. And, you know, when the guys are out there working, I tell them, it's like, you know, just because you had your first match doesn't mean that you're fully trained. The day that you stop learning is probably the day you need to get out.
Right.
So it's a good place to go and knock the ring rust, keep the ring rust off of you, and to learn new things. There's guys that I have that'll go out on different weekends, and just had a student get back from Iowa on a match, and he was like, you care to watch it and critique it for me? Watch it, give him honest critiques, make him take notes on it, and like, okay, you could have done this better.
Right.
You could have done this better. But all in all, pretty good structure. Now let's work on that. Let's get in the ring right now. Let's work on that. So the next time that comes up, that's not an issue for you.
Right.
Or the next time this happens, why don't you try this? And we try to work those into scenarios, because I believe I believe in like, it's kind of like coaching a football team. You say, look, we ran this route. It didn't work against this team. Let's study the film Monday after the game on Sunday. Let's watch it. Right. Now, what can we fix in case they try to do this and they try to rush us, they try to blitz us? What are we going to do? Let's fix it, because that's the only way we're going to win as a football team.
Right.
And I'm always, like I said, I'm not a drill instructor. I'm not about making the guys run wind sprints until they puke and doing Hindu squats. My thing is, if you want this bad enough, you'll do that on your own time, and you'll take advantage of having ring time. I used to get up and drive 4.5 hours on Saturdays when I was in high school, just so I could set up a ring, so I could beg to have 30 minutes in that ring. And I'm like, you have these at your disposal, and you live 60 miles away. You need to focus on the ring time when you're there. You know, and you can go to your local Planet Fitness and lift weights. You can go do all that, and you can honestly tell who's putting in that extra time and who's not. And that makes me that shows me that they want it.
Right.
And you try to reward those people that are putting the work in outside of the ring as well as inside of the ring. And little things like that. I was always told that a pro wrestler's job is not to have the most entertaining match on the card. Your job as a pro wrestler is to get people in the building to watch the show, you know? So you're talking them in the building, whether it's that interview that Hulk Hogan would do to try to talk you into the building.
Right.
So if I don't see guys, and now we have a really good tool that didn't exist in like social media. Like, you have a platform of people that just like you and your fans or your friends. I mean, you can talk about the upcoming events. We've all worked with that one guy, like, hey, come watch my band. Come watch my band.
Right.
Then you come watch their band one time and they're horrible. You're like, okay, you got me one time, but I'm not coming back.
Right.
I tell them, I was like, don't be that guy with a horrible band.
Right.
When you finally talk your friend that's not a wrestling fan into showing up, they show up and you're horrible. What good is that? You
Right.
want them to show up and go, man, that was freaking awesome. My kids had a good time. I've never been to a wrestling show. Now we want
Right.
to show up and cheer you on when you're in town 4 or 5 times a year. So little things like that, little nuggets that I try to give my students that I think I have an advantage over a lot of other coaches. And there's some great trainers out there, but I've been around, and one thing that I've been able to do is by traveling, see what works in different areas, see the matches that do work. You know, when I ring announce matches, whereas most guys watch one match that night, which was theirs, I
Right.
watched 7 and 8 being right there.
Right.
So I was always taking notes. What worked? What didn't work? What did the crowd react to? So those are the little advantages that I think made me the attention to detail as far as being a wrestler, being a promoter, and being a coach was
Right.
watching everything else, watching the complete package come together. So, yeah.
So this is, with all the people that you've had come through the studio, is there one particular person who's like really stood out that you're like, you know,
Man,
I know this person?
You know, it's kind of like saying pick your favorite kid. You can't. You know,
Right.
you love to see them all grow up.
Right.
And there's some that you're just like, some of them you show up and be like, I really hope the best for them, but it's not clicking with them.
Mhm.
And then some people, it takes longer than others to click.
Right.
Some people you're training and you're just like 3 months in, you're like, am I wasting my time with these people? You know, I'm like, you're right. I don't have a lot of hair to pull out, but I'm like, am I wasting my time with this guy?
Right.
Or is he wasting his time? And I always try to cut to the chase and try not to sugarcoat as much as I can.
Right.
But at some point you have to say, look, whatever you're doing is not working.
Right.
Maybe is it the way I'm coaching you? Because that's working for everybody else, but this is not clicking with you. So instead of you wasting your time, energy, money, whatever it is, you know, put the work in, come here, let's try it. Let's try it my way. And then there's some people that take to it like a duck out of water. And I've watched a lot of great talent, and it may be something that happens in their personal life. Maybe they get married, maybe they settle down, maybe they have kids. You don't know. So some of the ones you think that are going to do it, you know, you see these guys that show up and they've got muscles on top of muscles, and those are the guys that usually don't come back after their tryout. You know, it's out of I'd say out of every 10 people that show up for that tryout, you might get 2 of them to stay around for a month.
Oh,
but once people fall and they hit that ring for the first time and they realize it's not a trampoline and there's not a spring there and it's basically a patio deck,
right,
that thins a lot of them out really quick without trying to be malicious and be like, you're going to get hurt, I'm going to rough you up. No, here's the simple fall. Once I know that you know how to do it safely, now let's take the fall. You either get that look of, oh my gosh, and then they watch wrestling in a different light. They usually have a bigger respect for it after that those guys that maybe they're armchair quarterbacking someone. That always makes me mad. A lot of that's one of my worst things about if I do go to an event like a WWE event or AEW event is listening to the die-hard wrestling fans talk like, well, I don't know why he just didn't go up to the top rope and double suplex him out to the concrete. And I'm like, yeah, you know, and this guy doesn't look like he's done a jumping jack in his life or played an organized sport. And I can always tell when people come and they've played organized sports too, or that they've played sports because they're coachable. And by coachable, I mean like when I'm talking or like Gary Graham and we're teaching class, because we have different guys set in because, hey, this week you're going to learn this and this and this. Gary's going to teach this. You know, Niles Plonk is going to come down. You're going to learn this, this, and this. And we try to do seminars and have different guys rotate in and out so they get a wide array of, you know, talent to cherry pick. And I see guys that when you're talking to them, they'll just drift off. But the guys you can always tell that have played an organized sport because they're like giving you eye contact. Yes, sir. No, sir. You know, and they've got that look. And then there's some that are like, they're off in la la land. And I'm like, they don't even have the respect to look in your eyes. And it's just, and I know society's changed a lot. And it's, but it's hard to get some people to get a phone out of their hands. So when
Right.
we're there in class, phones are down unless we're doing an assignment, and you need to give me your attention for the couple hours that you're there.
Wow. So let me ask you, how did you make the transition from wrestling to slap fight? What was that like?
JT Tilly. I promoted boxing. Excuse me, and it'd be I don't know. I think I started promoting boxing in 2005.
Okay.
Somewhere right in there, we started promoting boxing, and I had a boxing ring, and we did a lot of not tough man, but tough man style fights. Local guys that were fighting,
Right.
amateur boxing, and JT had some fighters on the card, and we would. Another buddy of mine promoted Branson, Missouri, and we would do Wednesday night fights, which would be Golden Gloves and amateur USA boxing up there. Well, he used my boxing ring. I had a really good boxing ring that traveled, and I still have it to this day because it's the one I will not sell. It can be 5 ropes for MMA, 4 ropes for boxing, 3 ropes for wrestling. It can convert to all those.
Oh, wow.
And it was a really good setup and takedown ring. So they always ran boxing in this bar. It was a bar and restaurant. And my ring traveled very, very well. And I had a really good crew that we could set it up and tear it down really fast. So I would come up and do that for Rick Guy that promoted Branson, and he would have me ring announce. And JT told me, he complimented me on one of the shows. He's like, "You're the best ring announcer I've ever heard." And a lot of the times I didn't even, with that amateur boxing, they would stick me playing the music too at the DJ booth. So I wouldn't get in the ring and do a lot of, "Ladies and gentlemen, the following contest is," no, I didn't do a lot of that there. He was just like, "Man," it's like, "You're really good." And I was like, "Well, thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that." He reached out to me years later and he said, "I'm going to be doing a kickboxing event, MMA and kickboxing. We're going to do a cage and we want a kickboxing ring. Could I rent yours?" And it was an outdoor event in Springfield. Yes, sir. Came up and did it. And I announced a couple things on it. He had a full-time announcer, does really, really good.
Right.
But I just made a couple announcements because we had a weather delay. And he said, "I'm going to be doing a couple more events in Branson at the landing on one of the floating dock deals there." And
wow.
So they used my ring for that. And when we hit it off, we always got along really well. And he reached out to me and he said, "I'm thinking about doing this thing called slap fighting." And I'd seen the slap contest that they'd have with the weightlifting deals overseas. People had shared those with me, and it was very rare that you saw that. But he pitched it to me, and I was like, man, I stayed booked on a lot of, Saturday nights. He was like, "We're going to do one on a Friday night in Branson." And I'm like, 30 minutes from my house, Friday night, I think I can make that work.
Right.
I'm like, I think I can make that work. So I came up, and when he first, literally he had a piece of paper with handwritten rules on it that they had written. It wasn't even typed out yet. And I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Man, I was hoping that you could use a lot of that pro wrestling deal and kind of draw some characters out of these guys."
Right.
But they weren't the most character driven guys. So I was trying to do what I could with what I had to work with.
Right.
And not just fights that we had were actually tournaments. So you would have a slap fight contest that may have went 10 rounds. Then you had to have another one. And meanwhile, that guy may have only had 5 minutes to rest. I'm like, we got to give him more time than that. And meanwhile, you're dealing with a crowd that continues to stay there and get drunker and drunker and drink beer. So it's also looking for somebody to entertain the crowd. So I would do that. I would just get up and "Hey guys," or, "tip your waiters and servers and blah, 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 blah." And I'd hit the plugs for the bar and everything else. And "Hey, we're going to be back here in just a little bit." And I would just try to engage them as much as I could and then do the next fight. And he was like, when he started streaming it, he was like, "I want you to be a part of this." And I was like, "Well, that's really cool." And then you saw everything come in. The production started increasing and everything else. So it went from literally being live bar shows that, that were just like, "Whatever happens, happens, bro." And him filming it with a camera, I can remember him going to me in between the rounds, "What do you think about this?" And I'm like, that dude just took a hell of a slap, and going back and forth, and just him just literally filming it on his phone and it's streaming live. to just, a few hundred people into now with the production and millions of people watching. Like I went to Ric Flair's final match in Nashville, and I was out there for the roast of Ric Flair and forgot that they were going to be streaming that on Fight. And like the Fight guys came out of the back that worked for Fight doing the production. And they were like, we heard you were here. And I was like, oh, you're a wrestling fan? And they were like, nope, slap fight. And I was like, yeah, I know. It was a redundant question. And they were like, that's like our number 2 program right now. It's like,
wow.
We're the slap pay-per-views during the time, the Slap Fight Championship pay-per-views. Then he got all the copycats coming in, not to say that it was an original, but he had a kind of an original deal and he was doing it right, but everybody saw what he was doing, but they went for blatant rip-offs. Like, let's rip off his logo. Let's rip off the barrel. Let's rip off this. And so everybody would be like, are you with that one group with this? And I'm like, no, man, I'm like, the group with the Wolverine and all these. Oh, okay. Yeah, we saw that guy. But man, it was a okay transition. And there's a lot of times where he'll be like, hey, you care to get an interview with this person after the fight? Number one, they just went 8 rounds and been slapped silly. Trying to get an interview out of some of these guys that have never had to talk into a microphone in their life.
Right.
It was like pulling teeth. So I'd be like, what are you going to do going forward in slap fight? And they're like, oh, try to do good. And you're like, well, there you have it, folks. Gonna try to do good. Like, thanks for selling that steak. I guess I'll put some sizzle on it later, man. But like, so there's so many times it would just be like a mind-numbing deal. But the guys that got it, as they saw it grow, kind of got it. I did a couple of, we went, one time we were waiting for a fighter to arrive. And I said, hey, can you give me a cameraman? And we just went into like the office and I was like, talk to me. I was like, just talk to me. I was like, just like we're doing now. Like, what made you want to do this? Like, hey, I just saw it online. It looked pretty cool. My buddies thought it was awesome. We thought it would be cool. I'm like, that's what we need. Yeah. So I just started asking questions. And there's some of those that popped up on there. And I was like, that to me made the guys relatable. It gave them a character because whether they come up with the name of, those crazy names out there and you hear all these names of Black Jesus is one of my favorite names that come Shamokin Thunderclap. And I'm like, how am I supposed to announce these? I don't even know what it says, on the paper. I'm like, who's the Nutty Bolt, and I'm looking around and I'm just like, Biscuit. There's a guy named Biscuit here now. It's like I missed one pay-per-view and I had all these guys with these nicknames show up and they're like, I'm Biscuit. And you're like, yeah, you are. Let's talk. But it's getting to see it grow has been so cool, man. It's been so cool. And there's a great group of production that goes on behind that with a great group of guys and girls with like Will and gosh, man, I just think JT's done such a good job of watching that grow and just the craziness and how he's been able to deal with technically building a sport, because that's what he did. He built a sport, and you're talking things that you have to deal with behind the scene, people ripping off your deal, this or that, and non-disclosure agreements because you're trying to make your pay-per-view audience big, but you can't stream it live, and people trying to sneak the results to the events and doing undisclosed locations, dealing with athletic commissions. And those are things that would make me pull my hair out. Dealing with the drama in between the contestants would make me, there's certain guys you got to keep separated when we're filming that stuff. And and I always consider myself, I'm like, dude, if this goes down, I'm right in the middle of all this. There's been a lot of those weigh-ins. He's like, Jason, step in there. And I'm like, oh, great. If this hits the fans, like I was like, JT, I'm not getting paid enough tonight, man. I don't wrestle till next weekend. But like Kyron Bowen, they do a great job, like the officials, and Q Davison, and they just put a lot of work in. And I've just enjoyed being a part of it. I love when we're able to take it on the road. Like we went to Dallas this last year. And to see those fans that showed up and that knew who we were. And there was a documentary crew that came and did a doc, and I was like, hey, Jason Jones was like, oh, no, we know. Like they had followed and watched everything. Right. Those the guys that showed up after that first power slap, some of those guys showed up to one of our, tapings after it was over. And I was like, hey, man, I watched you. Like, no, but I didn't know that these guys, to get ready for that, went back and watched all the old slap fight stuff. So they knew who I was.
Right.
So they're like, can I take a picture with you? And I was like, I was going to ask to take a picture with you, man.
Right.
You were like my favorite dude on that show in the house. And they were like, no, man, no, we watched you to get ready for all that. So I thought that was pretty cool that even though you filmed something 6 years ago, there's someone still watching it and it still has life to it.
Right.
It's cool stuff, man.
And that's the thing I noticed too, is I went back and started looking at some of the old stuff and seeing how it's changed since from the beginning and to where it is now. Now it looks, the whole production looks a lot more professional. Yeah.
Literally, we started off with I think there was 2 floodlights and a banner. Well, there was first of all, the original, if you look back on the original episodes, and I don't know if they're still out there, there was the first 2 original ones weren't even a barrel. It was 2 miniature folding tables stacked on top of each other with a banner around it. And I think we had one smaller slap fight, like the SF logo hanging behind me. Because I think I took a picture of it at the beginning and I'm I'm pointing at and the banner is kind of small. And then I think we did 2 shows like that. And he's like, what would you guys think about a barrel? Because the barrel wouldn't move as much because the little things were constantly getting knocked over.
Yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
And because guys, their belly would graze it. And then and there was a lot of give and take. It was cool because he would be like, what would y'all think about, the stepping and the clubbing? What would you think about this? And so he literally took the people that were there on production and then we spitballed ideas. He was the main guy that does all that, and him and Q and Kyron. They really kept that thing going. But there's a lot of times he's like, "What's your opinion of this?" And he really valued your opinion, and I think that's what's made it successful. Is he took what he knew his audience liked to see. I wouldn't even want to run the social media because I saw some of the social media. I'm like, I just can't look down that. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. But they would always get on there and crap talk the guys or whatever. But my son, my son's a junior. He's 16 years old. My daughter just graduated. She's 18. My kids grew up around me wrestling and being somewhat of a local celebrity. So it was never a big deal to them.
Right.
Until my son called me one night and he was like, oh my God, Dad, Charlie talked about you on his podcast. And I'm like, cool. Who's Charlie? He goes, Moist Critical. And I'm like, who's that? And he was like, the Penguin. And I'm like, no, I don't know. And I guess this dude had 10 million followers or something.
Wow.
I had no idea who he was. And he was a huge slap fight fan. Wow. And I guess on his deal, he started talking about it and he named me on there as the host. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So that day, Dad was pretty cool. And then I was like, well, hey, you want to go to a taping? I know where the undisclosed location is because Dad's got to be up there. So we brought him up, him and my daughter, and my son was jacked about it. And all of his buddies were jealous. And so they gave him a role on camera. So they would do these walkouts that they would film with the fighters where they're warming up and they had the headphones on and they're, doing their little warm up thing.
Right.
And then as they would come onto frame, they take the headsets off and hand them to somebody. He was the guy that they handed the headphones to.
Right.
And JT, and his name is Jackson, but JT kept calling him Larry. And it was so funny. It was like an inside joke, like, Larry, come over here. And he was always messing with him. And so they even give a shout out to Larry in the comments, on the credits at the end. And so I remember watching that pay-per-view and I sent him a screenshot and he was like, please send me that a little bit better resolution so I can post it on my social media. So his buddies were like, they just thought he was BSing about, having an end with slap fights. So that was pretty cool. And then this summer when we did the event in Dallas, Larry got to make a comeback and Larry was with me backstage. So when the guys would come off, they had the belts, they would hand the belts off and Larry would hold them until the winner was called to the official and stuff. So he's grew up around slap fight now. It's pretty neat.
Cool. So because you've been doing this for a while now, who do you think, well, let me ask you this first. What was the toughest fight that you remember seeing?
Darius and Wolverine.
Darius and Wolverine?
It was the one that got stopped.
Yeah, okay, yeah, the one you talked about, the 27.
Yeah, the 26, 27 rounds. I lost count. That was a tough fight, man.
Wow.
That was a brutal fight. And that's like two of the OGs, you know. There's like three of them that I always consider OGs. It's Frank the Tank and Darius and, of course, Wolverine. And those are like – and then you had not too long after that, you had the Bell come in. And he was, I'd say he was a few fights in. And then there's been others that come and go with different weight classes. And, but those are like, if you ask me your four Mount Rushmore guys,
right,
it would probably be those four. I don't know if there's 4 or 5 guys on Mount Rushmore. I can't four. But yeah, Darius, Frank, the Tank, and Wolverine, and then probably the Bell right up there. Just those are the 3 OGs that were around the longest, you know. So
right.
I always have a special place in my heart. I love all the guys equally. Like I love watching them compete. I'm like, y'all have more, pardon my language, I was like, y'all have more balls than I do doing this stuff. I'm like,
right.
And then it's become a conversation piece with people that you wouldn't think. Like a lady stopped me at the bank the other day that works there.
Right.
She's a loan officer. And she was like, oh my gosh, we've been watching you on. And I was like, what? She was like, oh yeah, we love watching slap fight. And I'm thinking, her coworkers are a bunch of like 50-year-old little ladies. I'm like, they watching this? But it's like a cringeworthy thing, but they love it. And then they get invested in the characters and like, ain't no way he can beat the Wolverine. I'm like, right on. So it's so funny. I enjoy it, but it's so crazy the amount of like people that, and my buddies were giving me a hard time. We were in Vegas this year for a wrestling thing, and they were like, aren't you that slap fight guy? Because I got it like 3 times in one day just randomly being in Vegas. I'm like,
right.
Yep, I didn't wear spandex for 26 years and wrestle, you know, and do this and do that, but I'm the slap guy now. And I was like, I'll take it. I'm proud of it. I'll do it. I'll run with it. I'll do the best I can do with being the slap fight guy. I'll do the best I can for him. So I don't know.
Cool. So where would you like to see slap fight, in the future?
It's doing pretty dadgum good.
Yeah, it's been growing.
Growing. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see more live events. And I know that becomes an issue sometimes with athletic commissions and things along that lines, but I'm a live event guy. I love live events. I love promoting live events. I love performing in them. I love announcing live events because you get one take at live events.
Right.
And you're able to feed off that crowd's energy, and it just makes the competition so much more as opposed to a closed set where there's 20 people there. And then there's still an energy that's there, but had you rather do it in front of 2,000 people or 20? I'd rather do it in front of 2,000.
Right.
And we did one in Oklahoma City this summer, and it was packed. It was a huge moment. Like, I was like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. But, like, those people knew that at 4 o'clock that slap fight started, and it went from, hey, we're going to be doing slap fight a little bit into just, like, they gave me a big entrance, and I was like, this is pretty cool. And they had the big digital LED board up behind me, and I was like, this is pretty cool because there was crowd like on 4 sides of us almost. And
wow,
I would love to see it do more live events and go on tour with it. I just think that would be fun. Right. And you could almost have your regular reoccurring slap guys, but you can mix it in with some locals. Right. That people would show up and I'm going to see Jimmy that works at the factory with me. He's going to go try to beat one of them slap fighters. And I would love to see more live events, man. I'd love to help promote the things. I would love to roll into a town and be like, we want to run a slap fight event here, and just watch their mouth either drop open or go, what's a slap fight? And be like, hold on, let me show you. You know, and just hand them the phone. I think that would be fun. I think that would be really cool to come to town and be like, slap fight's coming. Uh, we had fans that showed up. Like these one people drove when we were in Oklahoma. They drove all the way from like somewhere in the middle of Texas just because they followed us online. They didn't know, they weren't personal friends of any of the fighters, but they showed up and they knew when we were there. We had set the slap fight banner up to do weigh-ins the night before.
Right.
And they were like, could we take a picture together? I'm like, well, yeah, let's go over here and do it in front of the slap fight banner. And they were like, they were like fangirling out, And I was like,
right.
Okay, guys, it's cool, man. Let's do this. But I think that would be cool and give them a whole fan interaction. Let them come take their photo and get an autograph with their favorite slap guys. I also think the competitors would like that. I think that would be fun, as opposed to just seeing their audience be online, to actually put a face with some of those people and be like, this is cool. I think you get better fights, in my opinion. I think you would get better fights with a bigger live crowd that you feed off that energy. I know I do, even when I wrestle. You put me in front of 200 people, I'm still having a good time. You put me in front of 1,000, I'm in hog heaven, man. I'm a kid in a candy store.
Right.
Yeah.
So next time you guys are in Dallas, you gotta let me know.
Yeah. Are you in Dallas?
Come to see a live event.
Are you in Dallas?
Yeah, I'm in Dallas. I'm in it's Louisville, so it's right outside of Dallas. But yeah, we're
awesome, man. Yeah, I went to Dallas twice this year. I was down there quite a bit, and we were doing wrestling in Arlington quite a bit. Almost had a monthly deal, and then the club we were running in, it was some kind of scheduling issue. But did Dallas with Slap Fight? Were you at that one?
No, I didn't. Yeah,
it was Arlington, I believe, but it was. We did that, and then we did. I came back and took my daughter to a concert, and we stayed in Fort Worth. But I love Dallas, man. It's always a good, and I've always went down there and wrestled, and like I had to go back the same day or whatever. But just it took our time. Like we drove down to where the old Sportatorium was and saw the patch of grass, because that was the one building I always wanted to wrestle in.
Right.
I love the Von Erichs. I love the Freebirds. I love that whole history of Dallas wrestling. And I love wrestling in Texas because everybody comes up to you, have a story. It's usually about the Freebirds. Like when I would travel with Miranda Gordy a lot, they would be like, her dad's Terry Gordy, and they'd be like, oh, we know your dad, blah, 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 blah. He come and wrestled in BFF, Texas 30 years ago at our high school gym. And I heard every story of every Von Erich, every Freebird, all of it.
Right.
I love Texas, man. Wow. And I love Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
I love Buc-ee's.
Yeah. We just had one built not too far from us about maybe 2-3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got one coming up to Springfield, Missouri. It should be open in the springtime. And I'm like, I love brisket, and you can't get decent brisket up here anywhere.
Yeah.
But where we went for the first time when I took my daughter down there to see a concert? She wanted to go see a concert, and that was her graduation present. I took her down there, and we did a couple museums while we were there.
Right.
We went and ate in Fort Worth at Cooper's Barbecue there across from Billy Bob's.
Yeah.
Best brisket in the world. I mean, and I'm like a brisket aficionado. That is some good food, buddy. So if you haven't been,
I'll definitely have to go try that.
I don't get paid anything, but if you guys want to send me some brisket, that's cool. But yeah, we went and walked around and just did some touristy stuff. Checked out the 6th floor museum and fun like that. It was pretty cool. But I'm gonna let you guys know when we come to Dallas. We'll have to get together.
Yeah, absolutely. You let me know, and we'd love to do a live show there.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, come in and talk to you guys and have some of the some of the slap fighters on.
Absolutely, man.
And we got to figure out a way to work that out when you guys come in. But so let me ask you this: so anybody who's what's the best way for them to do that? What's the best way for them to follow your career?
Honestly, social media anymore. You can follow me on Instagram, Space Cowboy Jason Jones. I think that's right. Facebook, Space Cowboy Jason Jones, same thing. Follow Mid States Wrestling if you'd like. That usually shows more of my tour. I do wrestle for other companies. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm in Oklahoma this coming weekend. I'll be
Okay.
in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm in a street fight that night, so that'll be a good one for Wrestling for a Cause. The best thing to do is follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, Space Cowboy Jason Jones. Check out my website. I'll put some stuff on there from time to time. Got all the official merch, all that good stuff. But I'll post all the. Be sure that you follow Slap Fight, and whether they've got live events. We've always got pay-per-views that we're doing. I'll try to post those when they're coming up, and the ones that I'll be hosting, and so on and so forth. But
cool.
I love to hear that you're down in Dallas, and
right.
This is awesome. Thanks for reaching out. I've had a good time just shooting the snot, man. I've had a good time. So
yeah, I appreciate you coming on. So what it'll do is you can send me some the links, and I'll put them in the detail section here.
Here, I'll do it real quick. If you want to get that shirt, you're going to go to that website.
Definitely.
Look at that one. It's a super soft. Let me see if I can get it right. There you go. It's a Space Cowboy. It's Simpson inspired. Got the Southern Heavyweight belt. Got my little dog, Tech the Wonder Pup, on there. And I've got the new that came out this week. It's the old school wrestling shirt. Rock and roll inspired. But go on there at spacecowboywrestling.com or mswtickets.com. And there's other merch, but that's some of my new ones that just came out. But check it out. If you want to throw some support my way, I always appreciate that because, like I said, that's how our bills get paid, and that's what puts gas in my tank, puts food on my table for my children. And I just love being able to do this, and I've been blessed. I've had some really good fans and supporters, and I've made some really good friends over the years. So I thank you for having me on, man.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much for being on, Jane. It's been a lot of fun, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. It's whether they like wrestling or slap fight or just me just randomly going off on stuff. I'm usually a fun follow.
So I'm definitely gonna reach out too because I like the Simpson shirt. So I'm gonna have to get one of those.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely, dude. I appreciate it, man. I've got a little bit of. It won't be a direct podcast, but it'll be more along the lines of some sit-down interviews and exclusives that I'm going to be doing a little bit more than I used to do. So I'll be sure to get you those too. So may have to have you on as a little guest. You can talk some knowledge with me.
Right, exactly. And anytime you have a new event or you want to share your podcast, reach out to me, dude. I'll help you promote it. So
I appreciate it, man.
Well,
thanks again for having me, brother.
Yeah, thanks for being on. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, guys, you are uniquely designed with purpose, and always keep moving forward. Peace.